Welcome to this explainer. Okay, picture this for a second. Did you know that a shiny, state-of-the-art manufacturing plant could actually make a company's financial metrics look way worse on paper than a crumbling, decades-old warehouse? It's true. Today, we're going to stress test a company's big-ticket investments and totally unpack the secrets to mastering the fixed assets turnover ratio. So, whether you've got an exam creeping up or you just really want to understand how businesses leverage their massive physical assets, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's dive right in. To make sure you dodge those sneaky exam traps, we'll be hitting 6 key areas on our agenda today. Number 1, defining fixed assets turnover. Number 2, unpacking the core formula. Number 3, interpreting the ratio. Number 4, the depreciation trap scenario. Number 5, exam pitfalls and limitations. And finally, number 6, long-term operating efficiency.
All right, Section 1, defining fixed assets turnover, measuring investment efficiency.
So, at its core, what are we actually looking at here? Well, the fixed assets turnover ratio basically tells us if the absolute mountains of cash tied up in a company's physical assets are actually doing their job and, driving sales. We're talking about property, plant, and equipment. You'll usually see this abbreviated as PPE. These are the giant factories, the heavy machinery, the massive vehicle fleets. This ratio is essentially asking one big question. For every single dollar a company has invested in these hard, tangible assets, how much revenue is it generating in return? It is literally the ultimate test of investment efficiency.
Moving on to Section 2, unpacking the core formula, the math behind the metric. Let's look at the actual math you're going to need to run on test day. Here's the formula in plain text. It is net sales divided by average net property, plant, and equipment. So net sales acts as our numerator, and that represents the revenue generated over a specific period. You can grab that number straight from the top of the income statement. Super easy. But it's the denominator, the average net PPE, that requires a bit more of your attention. Notice those two specific words, average and net. I can't stress this enough. This is exactly where people slip up on exams.
Now you might be wondering, why do we even need the average in the first place? Well, it's because activity ratios are pulling information from two totally different timelines. The income statement covers a full period of time, like a whole year, right? But the balance sheet? That's just a snapshot at one single moment in time. So to properly match these two things up, we have to calculate the average of the beginning and ending net PPE balances. It's just 3 steps. Step 1, you grab the beginning net PPE. Step 2, you add the ending net PPE. And step 3, just divide by 2. Boom! That gives you an accurate, smoothed-out denominator for your final calculation.
Which brings us to Section 3, interpreting the ratio, reading the results.
Let's say you crunch the numbers using an example from our source text, and your calculation spits out 2.5 times for the current year. What does that actually mean in the real world? Well, it tells us that the company generated $2.05 in sales for every single dollar they invested in average net PPE. But here's the thing. To know if that's actually good or bad, we have to have something to compare it to. In our source example, the prior year's ratio was 1.64 times. So jumping from 1.64 all the way to 2.05 times, that is a pretty significant shift. We just need to figure out if that's a red flag or a green light.
Look, in a vacuum, a higher turnover, like that jump to 2.05 we just talked about, is exactly the happy path you want to see. It implies the company is highly effective at utilizing its property, plant, and equipment to generate robust revenue. Basically, they are squeezing way more sales out of their existing infrastructure. On the flip side of that, a lower turnover suggests underutilized assets. Think of a massive factory that's just sitting idle half the day, or excess capacity that simply isn't translating into actual sales.
Okay, let's head into Section 4, the depreciation trap scenario, an illusion of efficiency.
All right, pay close attention, because this right here is a classic exam trap. Remember how our formula relies on net PPE? That's the gross cost minus accumulated depreciation. Now think about a really old factory. Because it's been churning away for years, it has some incredibly heavy accumulated depreciation, which makes its net book value absolutely tiny. And what happens when you divide sales by a tiny denominator? You get a massive, artificially high turnover ratio. It creates this perfect illusion of high efficiency, even if the actual day-to-day operations haven't changed one bit, compared to a shiny, brand-new factory that has a much larger denominator. Bottom line, you absolutely must consider the age of the assets.
Moving right along to Section 5, exam pitfalls and limitations, knowing what to watch out for. So the depreciation trap is just one caveat.
Always remember that while ratio analysis is an incredibly useful tool, it definitely has its limitations. This specific ratio gets heavily skewed by a few key things. We already talked about the age of the assets, but it's also massively impacted by the specific accounting policies that management chooses to use. For example, if a firm decides to use a declining balance depreciation method, they're writing down their assets much earlier than if they used a simple straight-line depreciation. That shrinks the denominator faster and artificially boosts the ratio way earlier in the asset's lifespan. And of course, we can't forget about the inherent capital intensiveness of whatever specific industry we're looking at.
Which brings up a very common exam question. Should you ever compare the fixed assets turnover of a heavily capital-intensive automaker to a labor-intensive accounting firm? The answer is absolutely not. Think about it. The accounting firm barely has any fixed assets. I mean, what? Some laptops and a few fancy desk chairs? So their turnover ratio is going to look astronomically high compared to the automaker's billion-dollar assembly lines. Comparing them is literally like comparing apples to bicycles. It makes no sense. Always ensure you have the proper industry context before you start making comparisons.
And finally, Section 6, long-term operating efficiency, tying it all together.
All right, let's zoom out and tie this all together. Ultimately, everything we've talked about comes back to a core concept called earnings power. You can think of earnings power as the sheer capacity of a firm's operations to consistently produce cash inflows. A predictable, stable pattern of earnings is literally a company's lifeblood. By rigorously analyzing the fixed assets turnover ratio, we're actually evaluating that true earnings power. We're making sure the company has the stable, long-term operational efficiency it needs to actually pay its fixed charges, service its long-term debt, and keep paying out those future dividends.
So, as you wrap up your studying, I want you to look past the surface-level math. Don't just plug and chug the formula and move on to the next question. Ask yourself, knowing the hidden impacts of asset age and accounting methods, how truly efficient is this company's asset utilization? Does that skyrocketing turnover ratio you just calculated represent undeniable operational excellence, or are you just looking at an aging balance sheet for a company that's about to require some massive, wildly expensive upgrades? Keep that exact question in mind, and you will be analyzing financial statements like an absolute pro. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for this explainer.